And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather for Friday morning here. We've got IFR starting out the day Friday with IFR on the Arctic coast there, marginal VFR into the North Slope, and for the Brooks Range all the way down into Cook Inlet, Copper River Basin, Kuskokwim Valley here, VFR. And marginal VFR for the southeast coast, IFR Kodiak Island, south shore of the Alaska Peninsula, and then we've got IFR here from the Bering Strait all the way down, covering the entire Bering Sea and Aleutian chain. And then for the afternoon, good improvement here. That marginal VFR burns back to well off the coast, leaving just VFR behind, right up into the interior. North of the Brooks Range, though, marginal VFR becomes areas of IFR for the coastline. And then we've got marginal VFR into at least the central Kuskokwim Valley and the western Alaska Range down across Kamishak Bay, Kodiak Island, southern Kenai Peninsula, and Prince William Sound. And then just a lot of IFR again out west over the Bering Sea and most of the Aleutians. And that IFR extending right into Bristol Bay with marginal VFR up over the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. And then for Saturday morning, no change out here, just a more widespread area of IFR for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Marginal VFR, Kodiak Island. Marginal VFR now up into the Kenai Peninsula. Cook Inlet, for the most part, VFR into the southern Susitna Valley. But some IFR showing up here along the Alaska Range from about Denali Park there southward toward Rainy Pass, also here over the southwest mountains and hills. IFR, central eastern Arctic coast, Brooks Range into the central interior, VFR. That extends out to Norton Sounds up to Kotzebue in the northwest coast. Marginal VFR for the southeast coast, and then again, not only does the marginal VFR burn back to the west, but the IFR disappears altogether. So Saturday afternoon looking really good here for the North Gulf Coast and the southeast coast. A little bit of marginal VFR lingering there down toward Akiak, Sitkinak Islands there, just near Kodiak. Otherwise VFR in the interior. IFR hanging in areas of the central and eastern Arctic coast. And a big reduction in IFR here over the Bering Sea, but still a couple of bands, one St. Lawrence Island down across Nunivak Island to Cape Neuenham, and IFR here along the southern coast of the Seward Peninsula, and another band of IFR over the southwestern Bering Sea. So moving on to the Brooks Range passes for Anatuvik and Adigan, mostly VFR, if not entirely VFR, for Friday for both passes there. Lake Clark and Merrill, occasional marginal VFR, and to a lesser extent for Rainy. And windy, though, VFR. Isabel, VFR, and Mintesta looking good, VFR. VFR for Tanita. Portage, marginal VFR. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels here at about 10,000 feet over the eastern interior, 8 to 10,000 over the Panhandle, and then some cooler air back out here with a system bringing some about 6,000 feet to the southwest coast there, but not all that chilly. 10 to 12,000 feet across Kodiak Island, and that goes right down along the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. And moving on to icing. Again, a big area of low pressure out over the Bering Sea, and something of a frontal boundary here, bringing considerable moderate rime icing chances into the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula, and up over the northern Bering Sea here with one band possibly crossing St. Lawrence Island, and getting up toward the Nome area with isolated moderate rime icing in across the lower and mid-Yukon River Valley areas there, northern Kuskokwim Valley into the Alaska Range. And from there, taking a look at the jet stream, westerlies, northwesterlies, 70 to 75 knots here from the southwest interior, right on down across the Gulf, cutting in over the Queen Charlotte Islands, so leaving light wind conditions for the Panhandle and much of the interior. Out west, southwesterlies up to 100 knots coming into the eastern Aleutian, east central Aleutian areas. And for 9,000 feet, low pressure back to the southwest there, southwesterlies 40 to 50 knots across the eastern Aleutians up toward the Pribilof Islands. light over the interior. Southeast maybe up to 35 knots at this elevation for the western Seward Peninsula and Bering Strait. But the Gulf of Alaska, actually from Kodiak Island all the way into western Canada, light variable wind conditions. And for 3,000 feet, light variable winds here, Kodiak Island across the Gulf to the Panhandle, northward all the way up to the Arctic coast. Get a little breezier at 3,000 feet, but not that much there for the central and eastern Arctic coastal areas. And southeast 20 knots right along the southwest coast, 25 knots up toward Gamble. And stronger winds here from the south at 25 to as high as 45 knots there by the time you get down to near Nikolsky, and then those turn westerly and diminish to about 20 knots farther to the west. So looking at turbulence with the breezier conditions up here along the Arctic coast, could be some isolated moderate turbulence, especially for smaller aircraft for the eastern and western coastal areas. Otherwise, the main area to look at would be here for the Alaska Peninsula area, or I'm sorry, for the eastern Aleutians, with some considerable moderate turbulence pretty likely there with some gusty southeast winds.